Hello once again, it's Matthew here from Matthew North Music. Thank you for watching this video. And if you like the kind of videos that I make, whether it be about music, electronics, retro tech, or maybe even some of my own tunes, please think about subscribing to the channel. It's completely free. All you got to do is hit subscribe, and if you hit the little bell icon, then you'll be notified next time a video is uploaded. And all my videos on my channel are completely free to watch. There's no subscription model or anything. Just hit subscribe and you're done. Anyway, I was going to write this video up as a blog on my Facebook page or my blogger, but then I kind of thought, well, actually I'll do a video because it's a lot easier to do for someone like me. And anyway, last night I went to see the Amy Winehouse film in the cinema, and it was the first time I've been to see a biopic in the cinema probably since the Elvis one, which I think was it last year or the year before? I can't remember now. I think it was the year before. Anyway, so it's the first biopic I've seen for a while, and I've always wondered how they were going to tackle this, because there's been a few documentaries about Amy Winehouse, but the thing they never cover is, for me, what I would have found the most interesting, and that would have been the early part of her life, because, you know, she was, a kid that grew up in London, but she went to various drama schools. I think she went to Sylvia Young, she went to dance schools, and she went to the Brit School. Now, if you don't know what the Brit School is, because I don't know if they're outside the UK or not, but the Brits, if you like, it's all linked up with the Brit Awards as well. And the Brit Awards is what used to be the old BPI Awards, and then they got sponsored by Britannia Music, who were a company that used to sell CDs through the backs of magazines, and then they got rebranded the Brits. And then the organisation set up the Brit School, which is in essence like a stage school really for pop stars. And one of the things about the film is that there was no mention of Amy's schooling at all. And bearing in mind she went to school with Adele at the same time, and apparently they didn't like each other, that would have been quite an interesting part of the film, and how she went to the Brit School, how the Brit School taught her to be a pop star. Because there's not much about the sort of the nuts and bolts of the music industry in this film. There's a few bits where she's having meetings with her management and her agent and whatnot. And there's a scene where the agent wants to sign her up for 19 management, and Amy goes, Simon Fuller in it, I don't want to be a Spice Girl. And it's like, she would have already known who 19 management were anyway. She probably would have already spoken to them while being at the Brit School, because I'm sure people, you know, Simon Cowell's cronies would be there all the time looking for act and talent. So it kind of didn't quite sit that realistically. But then I suppose this film is made for the general public. It's not made for people that are seriously into music. Now, there's another scene that was I found quite interesting, where they're in the Island Records office, and she's sat on a chair, and there's a load of Island record sleeves behind her. And you would think it would have all been just like U2 and Bob Marley and, you know, and Grace Jones and all the big stuff. But just on her shoulder there is the sleeve of the Fotheringay album, which, you know, is considered quite these days, probably in mainstream world, quite an obscure album, being a spin-off project of Fairport Convention. But it's one of my all-time favourite records, and to see that as a prop in the big screen, I really like that. But no, this film really, it kind of starts with her at home, and she's obviously just before she gets signed, and it shows that she obviously had a loving family, and her gran in the film comes across very much as like the hero of the piece, really. She's like the person that Amy was obviously closest to. Her dad, Mitch, comes across kind of how you would imagine him to be, really, as being, you know, not that clued up, shall we say. But yeah, it was mostly just a film about her and Blake. That's basically what the film was about. There was the name Mark Ronson was mentioned once, but there was nobody playing Mark Ronson, or if they did, the character was in and out in a flash. There was some good bits. I mean, the actual sound, the mixed sound, the music in it was very, very good. And when I was reading the credits, it was produced by Giles Martin. So, you know, I mean, Giles Martin's a great producer. I don't know why they didn't get Mark Ronson to do it. Maybe he didn't want to do it, or maybe he didn't want his name associated with the film. Because that's the other thing with a lot of biopics, is that a lot of people, if it's about them, don't want to be involved. But the fact all the Amy Winehouse music was cleared and used, that would suggest that there was a certain amount of permission granted. But as I said, the live music scenes in it were really good. They've recreated a gig at Ronnie Scott's, a place I know well, to the point that they'd obviously done it fairly recently because they had the current Ronnie Scott's backdrop up there. Whether it was Ronnie's or they just didn't want to bother to try and make it look like it did in 2001, 2002, whenever it was she played there. Then, but I think, to be honest, unless you've been there or you know the place, it's just a minor technical difficulty for a geek like me, really. And then there's another nice scene where she's at the in London, but it's the Grammys, and she wins her Grammy and then performs at the Grammys, and they kind of recreate another tune from that set at the end of the film. And there's also a scene where she's playing like a homecoming thing at the Dublin Castle. I think that was like the Camden Crawl or something from in the mid-2000s. I do remember those events happening at the time because obviously mid-2000s I was going up to London an awful lot and I was playing a lot of those venues. Although the Dublin Castle I actually only played once, and that was back in 2000. But many of the other Camden venues, places like the Camden Underworld and the Garage in Islington just up the road, and a few other places, you know, I certainly used to frequent quite a lot. But yeah, it's not, they didn't overdo the drugs. I mean, they made reference to it, and there is, I think, one scene where she's smoking crack, but the rest of it is they've let you understand what was going on without being too gratuitous. And I think I think that, yeah, you don't need to see people just getting off their faces all the time. You know, it gives enough of what's going on, and that's kind of all you need to know, really. Same with the drinking. I mean, there was some scene, you know, there was 3 or 4 scenes where obviously they're showing Amy completely out of it and out of control. But it could have been like Sid and Nancy. And that was kind of what I thought the film might have been. It would have just been, you know, drugs, debauchery and death. And it kind of wasn't that. Because, you know, like I said, there was some, you know, some quite, you know, there's a lot of sadness in the film. But that's what you'd expect. It's a sad tale. But I think the final observation, I think, of the film is the ending. And I think they did that very well. I think they did that very well indeed. They could have dragged it out a bit like the end of the film, what was it, the David Essex film Stardust, where, you know, there's like this long death. But no, they didn't. They did it very tastefully, I think. And so, yeah, as a film, it was quite long, but it didn't feel that long, which was good. I think it was about 2 hours 15, something like that, after all the adverts had been on in the cinema. But it kind of didn't drag, which I was actually quite surprised about, bearing in mind it really only covered maybe 5-6 years of her life. And, you know, and a lot of it was the middle portion. Because obviously after, you know, after Blake went to prison, from that point onwards was kind of the last 15 minutes of the film or thereabouts. So yeah, it's kind of a better done Sid and Nancy, I suppose. As I said, the music was very good. The cinematography was very good in the film. The sound mix was excellent. So, you know, it was a very well made film. But like I said, maybe they might make another film about her, which maybe finishes when her first record comes out or something, and it just covers the early years. That, I think, would be interesting. A bit like the Beatles' Backbeat film, which kind of is basically about the Beatles in Hamburg, and it kind of ends where the Beatles have just put out Love Me Do, the first single. And I think a film like that about Amy, or even a really well done, well documented documentary about that early period of time would be really good. I'd certainly like to see that. But you know, I still think it shows that there, even though to most people Amy Winehouse is just thought of as a car crash, she was a great singer, and her records were really good. You can't fault that. And it is good that there are still films being made about musicians and about music, even if sometimes these biopics are not done very well. As I said, this one, for what they were doing, and it's obviously the film would have been made by a bunch of people in suits, and all they really were interested in was the Blake story and her life and her death, not the music. So I think probably in about 5 or 10 years time, maybe 10 years time, or maybe when there's a significant anniversary, there will be another Amy Winehouse film that will be much more in depth, because as time goes on, people will learn more about what happened, what went on. There'll be more books written, and then somebody will just say, right, we're going to make a film about it. That's what I think anyway. But I'd like to know what you think. If you've seen the film and you've got opinions on it, you might totally disagree with everything I've said, and that's fair enough. That's what the world of the internet is for open discussion. Anyway, hope you found this of interest. I'd definitely say go and see it, because at the end of the day, they don't make many films like this, so it's got to be worth a watch. And thank you for watching my review. Catch you on the next video.